Hello and welcome, beautiful people. Today is November 19th, 2024, and we're focused on a Digital World Town Hall Council meeting where we provide basically an update from the last prior week, as well as general dialogue from the things that are happening. We are joined by a live audience that'll actually ask some of those questions. We're going to get started by the invocation or a prayer by Billy real fast. If you could get us kicked off, Billy, that'd be great.
Sure, if you can, let's bow our heads in prayer. Father, thank you for this opportunity to be together as a family from all around the world. And I just pray that you would be with us, that your spirit will be amongst us, the angels will be present to protect us from evil influences, Lord. And may we share and be open and help each other through the challenges and tough times that we are in. And we just ask for your guidance, always in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Kia ora, Billy. It's wonderful to have you
Kia ora.
here. And for those, we'll actually have a wonderful guest here with us named Bruce. I won't be specific on names, but amazing man. Known him for, 15 years, long time. But it's very key for him to be here for Aotearoa, also known as New Zealand. So we're also joined by Elle and Wally as hosts. So if there's anything support related or tactical, please go ahead and direct it, any kind of questions or comments there. This is a private membership association. Some of the things we'll talk about may be forward-looking. As for those that may be joining us for the first time, we're basically talking about secret combinations in different industries. Well, maybe this is oil, maybe it's pharma, maybe it's transportation, maybe it's technology, maybe it's media, but how they basically work with one another to then collude and actually get into governmental systems. We've seen this historically with systems with elections. And the next thing you know is not only do they change policy, but they also change monetary systems, or they can control the monetary systems. And then how all the policies and systems behind it basically work to control others. Now, some call it slavery, some call it other forms of it, but ultimately it takes away the choice of the individual. And so what we're all focused on is decentralized systems, which gives choice to the individual back. When you help the individual, you help the family unit, you help the communities, and you ultimately help the earth understand that we're all here having a human experience as a family, not one to be controlled by another, enslaved, or taken the choice from the other. The digital world's goal and objective is to provide governance in fine balance between really freedom and governing centralized authorities. So, and then there's other systems, for instance, that the digital world will enable things like the Pacific Union, which is focused primarily on a human right around privacy, as well as around getting some feedback from someone here. So around privacy, as well as a right to travel. Wally or Elle, if you could find that, that would be greatly appreciated. So what we talk about is digital identity, 12 words, and how those 12 words link with an individual. And this isn't just with a Clear phone, but with any Apple phone or Android phone, but how the individual can then be empowered, taking away passwords, usernames, logins, and it really simplifies all of their identity, but it creates a system that uses derived keys where all of their world is basically private, and machine learning and artificial intelligence can't follow them in that. So I'm going to try and drop out and see if we can figure out where this feedback is coming from. Anybody able? I'm going to mute you. I know, Bruce, you tried to get on, but I'm going to see if that is coming. Billy, would you mute before I mute? No, it's supposed to be coming from Bruce. Okay. So, Bruce, we got an audio issue on your side, but you should be able to unmute now. We were hearing you. That's really good. So we're going to go back over to this topic, and we're going to jump to one of the first things that ties to, well, before we do that, no, I'm not going to introduce you just yet. I'll do it in a second. So I want to talk a little bit about this last week and some of the things that we've been working with and for and on, and which is really what we call the American Republic. And it's called that primarily because when it originally started, the United States of America was a republic, and a republic if we could keep it. And so there was a massive movement behind that, especially as folks saw the United States of America be taken over and then not being able to make, basic corrections. It looks like the House, the Senate, the leadership, they've all been duly elected. So a lot of that stuff doesn't need to be there. So maybe the United States of America could actually replace what we call the American Republic in this URL. Today, we cannot do that because we don't have the copyright law, the trademark right law, and we don't want to be involved in anything associated with any form of potential creation of something we don't own or have. But this has actually been trademarked. And for those that are not aware, let's see if I can even find. I've had people come up and ask me and say, are you part of the CLEAR at the airport? And I think, let me see if we've even, it may not be in here. Maybe it's not. There's a trademark. Let's see if it was added. Yeah, here we go. So a lot of folks don't understand. So this is the registration number. It goes all the way back to 2021, but it was originally applied for primarily around the United States, as well as Europe, as well as parts of the Pacific. This is domiciled out of New Zealand. But what this does is it provides air cover, if you will, around the term CLEAR. For instance, I traveled from Fort Lauderdale today to Utah, and I don't walk through the machines. I go get patted down because people have choice to opt out. And when I went around and I look at these big machines that they have at the other side of it, what it says is CLEAR. Before you enter into them, they pop this term out, CLEAR. But the organization's names are actually not clear. And after that, what we did was we actually went and we worked with some of the folks within Delta. So for those that are not aware, some of the shareholders behind CLEAR and I know we've got guests from all around the world, South Africa, Australia, Canada, Mexico, all around the world. Delta touches almost every part of the world. They were telling us about how they stopped traveling to certain parts because their planes are getting shot at, even here in America, which is crazy. But basically how Delta put money into some of these organizations that are basically helping people to get through. And they also talk about how they don't believe in these organizations. So even employees of these different organizations like Delta, but imagine if an individual could actually travel, pay for things, get rewards, and even get in a jurisdiction of what they want around dispute resolution instead of having multiple jurisdictions. For instance, let's say that someone travels from Europe to the US to a Polynesian island, let's say New Zealand or Aotearoa, and let's say a bag is lost. What governs how that actually gets fixed? So what they're doing is they're saying, hey, not only do we need to fix the reward program, which is a different conversation, but we actually need to track bags, and we're actually using blockchain to do it. And then they're talking about, could we use the rewards as a form of payment? And this isn't just Delta, but many other organizations, not just travel organizations either. I mean, think about Marriott, same type of thing. They basically want, when you go and check in, you want a form of ID and you want a form of payment, because they just want to know, hey, these people are trusted. And that's what this system does. Number one is it is a system for identity for the future. We call it really for the new millennium, if you will. If you identify that individual emphatically and in a trustless type environment, so you don't have to you can literally trust if they went to a school, if they got an education, if they got a certificate, if they have a bank account, if they have a certain ability to pay bills or have paid bills, or if they've been to certain locations. And that's when we talk about this Life app and how it actually relates to that. So imagine if we work with, and if for those of you that don't remember, when we look at the digital world, there's a couple different components, or even the Pacific Union. Remember this program where you have different vendors. maybe it's Marriott's, different vendors that actually approve an identity that is decentralized, and maybe payments and maybe rewards and maybe disputes. But if they don't do that, then they're violating a human right to privacy and to travel. Just like the European Union with GDPR goes after big organizations. Marriott's paid them hundreds of millions of dollars. Facebook, $5 billion plus. You know what the latest one that GDPR is going after? Apple for $200 billion. So think about this. This is all because consent. So GDPR with the European Union is all about consent. They say, hey, you have this amount of time to stop tracking and profiling people in this way and collecting data. And if you store people in the European Union data without their consent, we're going to go after 5% of your revenue. So they basically give them notice. Next thing you know, they're starting to go after these revenues. They actually went after the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They go after folks that are large organizations. Well, Apple is just the latest one. The one that they went after prior, Amazon. And they won. They're actually winning and getting paid out. But that's not what the Pacific Union does. The Pacific Union, instead of GDRP, it's DDPR. And what it focuses on is privacy and the right to travel using decentralized identifiers for the individual. So why is it that people can't have a type of, and I'll jump to some of the work that we're doing down in Mexico. Notice this passport. Okay, and this doesn't say Mexico, it says Mexican. So when we look at the Mexican country, it ties to the work that we're doing there. For instance, Mr. Green and myself met with the Mexican consulate, he's on this call, in the United States. I won't be specific where, but basically working through the potential of having a passport that doesn't show the full name, but to be able to scan it. So anyone can scan this, and then it pings the individual, says, do you want to allow this person? Yes, no, and then automatically shows them. So it's a third-party validator around identity. So when you look at that type of maturity around systems, and it's not just passports, but think about it around a driver's license or even a license plate. So for instance, I'll jump to Mexican country and we'll scroll down. I think the license plate's in here. So imagine a license plate that actually ties to cryptographic keys. So up here in the top, this is actually a good example. We talked about derived keys earlier. These 16 digits in the top left is a key that then converts into 12 words as a derived key. So for those of you who are not aware of cryptography, the 12 words are basically just a key, okay? So, and there's a private key and a public key. You always retain your 12 words as a private key. So you just need to remember 12 words out of the 60,000 or however many words there are in whatever language everyone's speaking. You remember those words, then you link them with your finger or an identifier of you, maybe your face. For instance, I believe that the most bios that they're tracking, for you jumped on a plane today, didn't you?
Yeah, my eyes.
Yeah. So did you use Clear?
Mm-hmm.
I'll introduce you to this gentleman when the time is right. But when you use Clear, so for instance, one of the ladies at Delta today, she was like, I don't believe in Clear because it wouldn't actually take my finger pulse or my eyes. I'm too old and I'm too weak, she says. She's such a doll. But one thing that it will do, and a lot of the reasons they're not doing this at Clear is because they don't have the patent behind it, which is actually bio for the face. Mm-hmm. So all of us have a unique face, just like our fingerprint. Our face is very, very unique. And so when they're actually, do you remember going into the airport? Did you probably public or private today?
I flew on Delta today, actually.
So it's the same thing. So,
yeah.
So when they actually plug in your driver's license, mm-hmm. You notice how to take your picture? They're actually taking a facial scan that is deeper. It can identify you better than any other scans. And not only that, it doesn't just identify you in the airports, it identifies you when you walk around in society. Mm-hmm. It's crazy what they're actually doing, and we're allowing them to do that. So this
I don't like that, by the way.
You can, next time, do this next time. So just say, I'd like to opt out of the photo. Mm-hmm. And they will kindly say, let me turn it off for you. And they don't even need to take your photo. That it's an absolute violation of your constitutional rights to privacy.
And they know that.
They know it. And I even asked some of them, do you really understand what you're doing here? They don't know really what they're doing.
No, they're just doing their job.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all they know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but what's beautiful is what's happening within society and what's transpired over this last week, which I'm going to jump into, is really all about rolling out this executive order. And I'll jump to this executive order for those of you that have not seen it. So this is an executive order. Now, this is not approved today by anyone in leadership, and I won't name names. I'm just going to throw it out there. But this is basically enacting decentralized systems. For instance, in the state of Utah, they followed the state of Washington or Wyoming to enable decentralized autonomous organizations to be created. I don't know if you're aware of that, which is where instead of creating a new company, you have an individual, maybe it's an attorney, or maybe it's a XYZ person, they put their name on it. For instance, people would start Nevada companies because those names didn't get disclosed. Theoretically, they really did.
Mhm.
But what they do is they use a derived key or a public key to actually create a company as a decentralized autonomous organization. And then you can bring in multiple different partners to say, this is how we're going to govern this. This is how many shares there are authorized. This is how many there are issued. This is what we're going to do, etc. So you can have multiple different entities basically managing a company. That started in Wyoming. Massive revenue has come into Wyoming just because of that. It's like going to be the new Delaware, if you will.
Mhm.
And then Utah actually adopted the same thing. So you can actually start a decentralized autonomous organization in Utah. But what the legislation now that they're pushing through is legislation that lets the individual actually get an alternative to the existing centralized identifiers. So Utah, and believe it or not, Utah is doing a lot of things that are always on the cutting edge, but some of the stuff they're doing now is actually wrong. So this is actually a driver's license from a private membership association tied to the actual, because what's behind the DMVs? The DMVs link to an organization that is private, like most of these do. Healthcare, private.
Mhm.
Legal, private. What they're doing is they're actually linking these systems with these real IDs, which May of this next year become fully enacted. And what they've done is they've actually said, oh, well, if you've got something that's 2 years old or expired even by 2 years, you can still use it, but you have to make sure that it's got this. Or all they do, literally, all they do is they take more time to push you through security.
Mhm.
They pat you down. They just, and all it is an inconvenience. For instance, I've even had twice where when they pat you down, the sensors go off an alarm. Like I've got bomb making materials or something on me. It alarmed, then they do it again, it alarmed. And I was like, well, what are you going to do? Oh, just go. I mean, it's just a joke. It's all about control,
Mhm.
fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So imagine legislation within the United States of America and or states like Utah, where the individual can actually get a decentralized identifier, whether it's maybe it's a concealed weapon permit, maybe it's a driver's license, maybe it's a marriage certificate, maybe it's a birth certificate, but you stop using the names on these. And that is really, we're talking so much around identity because it's the core of everything. Like people start talking about, well, I can transfer this asset this fast, or I can have this much assets behind this asset. Like Bitcoin is just doing amazing with the amount of folks that are actually understanding that there's only going to be 21 million of these things. So it's going to appreciate. Even though it may take 10 minutes, people may not understand how it works. They may not understand the value behind it, but they understand it's the future. And big organizations, especially when they start talking about EFTs and money to it, we're talking $2 trillion has already been dumped into it. And in my opinion, it's just getting started. But think about what if Bitcoin could actually be real time? And what if it could actually tie to identity? And I believe that that is actually what, when we start looking at all these executive notices, by the way, this is now updated to Mr. Trump's signature. So that's going to be one of the things that we're focused on. And I'd like to report this last week, literally today, almost a week ago, we spent some time, this actually goes back a whole nother conversation. This particular one was around governance of money and the future of money. This was out of DC. This is actually the strategy that ties to phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So a lot of the different folks that are on this call and we've been working with are out of the Pacific, whether it's Aotearoa, Vanuatu, Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, or the Hawaiian Kingdom. These are all Polynesian, Micronesian, or Melanesian-based cultures that is part of phase 1. Why? It represents more than half of the world, literally 64 billion acres of land or water.
Mhm.
Think about that. Not 64 billion. That's acre. Like it's just massively big. Over 25,000 islands. And the actual, I'm going to pull this up because this might be the first time that our special guest has seen this. So this is a map of where it basically is. So Polynesian, Melanesian, Micronesian, these different cultures already understand decentralization at the core of their cultures. Like in Vanuatu, it's in their constitution already. In Tuvalu, which was the first country to actually sign up, it passed through their legislative councils, through their cabinets, and it's written into their law and they actually changed their constitution and then had all of their elections after that. So these different countries are actually using these types of systems from the digital world. And that's some of the countries we're working with. These are examples of what they are. So how you can actually log into it. For those that have not seen logins, I'm going to go ahead, and I don't think we've got a representation from the Hawaiian Kingdom or the Kingdom of Hawaii, but I'm going to pop open, again, any phone, you just grab the Life app, you basically log in. So I'm going to click on login here. And this is all about enabling the individual to govern themselves. So no passwords, no usernames, but literally, for instance, this truck outside, that plate, we can actually scan and this is a normal scanner, right? So this is not, anyone can even scan this on this call, literally. So I'm just gonna, you don't have to have any special apps. So it pulls up the registration, the insurance, it verifies if it's stolen or not. It validates who the drivers are, maybe who has financed it. And notice the expiration, it doesn't expire for 100 years. So literally, if they don't sell the vehicle, they can actually, the license plate, if you see here, it literally doesn't expire. Okay, so not only is it beneficial from you not having to go through the brain damage all the time, but this is an example of a derived key, and the last 6 digits are actually what you see on the license plate, but then really the value is when you scan that license plate. And then you can see who's the drivers. This is a perfect example of it. You can see who the drivers are, but if you want to actually see the last name, you have to go through a validating, so scan this code to view. So that's basically—
I just scanned it, and I've got all the information.
You got it, but you can't, you know me, but you don't, from this system, you don't actually know what my last name is unless you go through a process of approval. And this is just one example. This is just under assets, just under vehicles. Let's say I wanted to start a business. Like, it is literally super. So all you do is you come in, you do the same thing. You actually go and scan it, and it's going to create a key, a unique key. Notice how that is just approved. So you've got a unique identifier that's unique to this business as it starts. Do you want to create a business?
In the Kingdom of Hawaii?
Yeah.
Sure.
What do you want to call it?
HYGGE.
Like that?
HYGGE, yeah.
And what kind of business do you want this to be? An association, benefit, corporation, decentralized autonomous business, a digital LLC, a society, special purpose vehicle, a trust? What do you want it to be?
Digital, what was that one you said? Digital something business?
Special purpose vehicle, just digital business?
Yeah.
Okay. Does it have a website today?
No.
So you can actually register up to 400 plus domains. Let's just say that we got .zone for conversation speaking. You can register it in multiple different jurisdictions. Let's go ahead and see if we can find a logo for this. Let's say you've already got it created. Let's say this was your business, okay? Well, which by the way, we can go and change here in a second. And I appreciate those that have seen this before. This is just important for a couple baselines to understand how simple this is. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back over here. We're going to upload that as the logo. We're going to change this, and we're going to create that company. Now, what we just created was a company that I can actually come into and I can actually share this company with you. So remember how you downloaded Hawaiian Life?
Mhm.
You can actually go and scan this and become a member of this company now. And so the things that are manager of this company. So the things that actually happen, notice the reputation, it's 0. This is what the public sees. So there's no assets. So the public sees in the Hawaiian Kingdom, you basically have a business that's created, no reputation. You have this unique identifier. So it's not a person's name. But as you add more people to it, so for instance, this is actually what I look like in the digital world, me as an individual. So they can't see, last name unless they go and want to scan and follow through with it, which I won't right this second. Or there's other things that they can actually see about me as an individual. So there's lots of these different individuals. You can see these are different companies that are within this environment. And you can also see, I want to see other assets in it. So I want to see other cars, right? Or I want to see other individuals. And then I want to actually try and tie into them. So the point is individuals, assets, and organizations like companies all have their own reputation. And as they build this reputation, like for instance, you and I are both scanned or tracked by TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. They give us a credit rating and we think, well, is that really who we are? Am I 720 or am I 520 or am I what? All it is based upon their records, their ability to say this individual pays their bills. I guarantee you are not like any other profile. Do you go and get credit cards the same way? Probably not. Do you go and pull down lines and pay? So they're very different in how they actually look at different people. So it doesn't attest to that. But I believe if people own their own reputation or their own business reputation cryptographically, and that ties to dispute. So if someone has a claim against someone else, it can tie to the same system. So it's a future of reputation, what they call, FICO, which is Fair Isaac. It's 2 guys that came together to basically create it. But we've jumped through a bunch of stuff. We're seeing how a business is created. We're seeing how assets are managed. We talked about the vehicle. We can also look at, whether it's disputes. Let's say it's a birth certificate. Let's say it's a death certificate. Let's say it's a driver's license, right? You want to go and get a new driver's license. You could tie to an existing driver's license, or you can take. So what we're talking about is a system that can actually govern a certain jurisdiction. And then we talk about other jurisdictions, these jurisdictions being within the Pacific Union, but there's lots of unions that are out there in the world. So out of the 8 billion plus people or so, these are the different regions or bioregions with the quantities. So we're starting with the smallest one, but enabling what one of the really largest ones, European Union, does, but enabling it in such a way where a human right around privacy and identity actually goes through a compliance test. So for instance, let's say Delta doesn't allow you to get on a plane with one of these new futuristic IDs. The Pacific Union will actually create a legal claim against them for violating a human right, privacy. So that's one of the ways. And then on the flip side, imagine if Marriott jumps on board with it. I believe more people would go to Marriott if they were able to actually use these same basic things. They're private, they can pay. Think about if you can actually convert other assets into it and pay in real time. And then the rewards as well. So you actually are going to get rewards from them. And then think about rewards today. Can you send rewards to someone else? Yeah, but it's a clunky process. But what if it could be in your wallet as an asset? And you could convert them to different assets. So in the future, currencies, equities, and commodities, including commodities for rewards, are going to be something that the individuals hold, cryptographically hold, and no one can take them away. And they can transfer them in real time with no government, no fees, and no banks.
So I could transfer my 6 million Delta miles.
Yeah. Now, I can't say that this is happening today, but what I can say
that's
is
the idea, though.
you got it. That's exactly right. Or not only that, but the world could see, hey, he's got them. And, they don't need to know, like, for instance, I'll bet you when you got on the plane today, they said, thank you for being a medallion member or whatever they said. And They don't need to know who you are, but they need to know that there's a loyalty. And it's that loyalty. We all interact with one another based upon loyalties. And that's what Net Promoter Score. If you've ever had somebody ask you on a scale of 0 to 10, what's the likeliness of you recommending us to a friend or colleague? That's all about loyalty. It's like, are you loyal to that brand? And I believe brands like Delta, like Apple, like Marriott, they're going to care about these types of things. That's why Apple is the way they are. I mean, we started a cell phone business and we see how hard it is to pull people away from the Apple ecosystem. It's not that their culture and their leadership and their product is the best. As a matter of fact, I can show you cameras that are better than these cameras. I can show you batteries that are better. I can show you screens that are better. I can show you durability and life systems that are better. I can show you companies that are more ethical. I can show you profitability. For instance, a lot of the people that are on here, we literally will pay 40% of all revenue out to people telling other people. Apple's never going to give that. If someone buys a $1,000 phone, they're not going to give $400 to people just for telling people. So the point is as these brands use these types of systems based upon, again, we're talking about a couple different things. Identity is being accepted, payments, rewards, and disputes tying together. And then what you end up with are different countries that can actually start opting into this. And when I say countries, it's not just going to be Canada's, Australia, New Zealand. By the way, tomorrow we will talk with 3 different countries. By the way, the folks that are on from New Zealand, we need to connect you in with some other folks. Timing is really key. But New Zealand's one of them, / Aotearoa. Israel. Israel's actually getting in the middle of it, believe it or not. And then also Ethiopia. So, by the way, Mike, I don't know if we've locked that, but I'd love to connect with you tomorrow. So those are basically some of the topics that we went over. Some of the other stuff were just events and, rubbing shoulders. This is actually in Florida here. This is a wonderful gentleman. And this actually goes back a bit. I won't go into the details, but there's also some things that'll happen in about a month from now. This is actually the gentleman that is running Argentina. And Argentina and there's some amazing leadership out of there. Remember we talked about currencies, equities, and commodities. Some of the biggest commodities of lithium ion phosphate is actually coming out of Argentina. And when we jump into this here, I'll see if I can, this is him playing down there.
Doing the Trump dance.
And it's not, what's interesting is it's not even about the hoopla and the noise, but it's about the ability for people to actually unite, align, and actually become free. Before this actually happened, Mr. Green on this call sent me over the speech, and I was like, hey, this is in Spanish. He's like, yeah, but they translated it. It's really important for you to listen to it. When I started going through it, it was actually very evident that, you know what, a lot of this has actually already happened. This is the digital world, which in addition to what you saw in the Hawaiian Kingdom can actually create countries, or excuse me, the digital world can create countries, whereas the Hawaiian Kingdom is one of those countries / kingdoms that fits into the digital world. Does that make sense? So the digital world is owned by no one. It's just a bunch of technology and councils, different councils that come together. So here's an example of what they are. They can come together and they create policy based upon voting. I'll give you an example of voting, and I'll use the Mexican ecosystem as an example, because some of the voting stuff that we're doing here is way futuristic. So like 10 years out. So let's say that I really like this. Let's say I really like this dude right here. So I'm just going to pull open. So this is one of the use cases around voting where I can verify who I am. It can't be duplicated. So I just voted. You'll watch that 13% right there climb up. Maybe I've already voted for him. Let's see if I can do this over here. Yeah, so I'd already voted for him. So it took my vote from him and pushed it over to this other gentleman. So it went from Marcelo to Samuel. I don't know if you saw that. If you didn't, I'm going to do it again. We're going to jump our vote up to this Mrs. Galvez. Am I saying the name right, Mr. Green? So because this hasn't actually ended, so you watch this 33 drop down, that 40% jump up in real time. Now what's happening is I'm voting anonymously before an election is actually done. So I'm changing my vote. But what's happening is within a decentralized system, everyone can actually validate that that actually happened. And you can only have one Life app per one phone. So unless you want to carry around a wheelbarrow and stick tons of phones in the wheelbarrow and charge them up, these things will actually start doing things that machines can't do. For instance, you're sending texts, you're making phone calls, you're creating photos, you're moving around. Computers can't do that same type of thing at scale, right? So it's what we call proof of life, whereas Bitcoin is proof of work. So basically someone has to buy an asynchronous miner, plug it into a wall, pay a power bill. If they don't pay a power bill, they're not going to keep mining and it's not going to stay up. And what people don't understand is what happens for those that the way that the mining works is actually over a 30-year period, and they have it every couple of years. So it cuts in half the value. So it becomes, the algorithms become much more complicated. So it actually gets more expensive over time. But what happens in 31 years when the 30 years of gamification's out? You think people are going to keep those nodes plugged in?
No,
So
we're
what?
not going to consume power because there's no value.
You
to
got it.
And
You got it. And that's one, a lot of people argue that Bitcoin doesn't have any value to it. And the real value is the complexity of figuring it out, one. So for instance, in 2009, 2008, and we've known each other since then, you know what we bumped into this tech, and I was so excited about it. I mean, Craig, this gentleman that I'll introduce you to, he watched me walk away from an amazing business that basically did centralized IT that I had spent my life building, my adult life building. And it was a wonderful business.
young
but
adult life.
yeah, touche. And to go and focus on decentralized systems, whereas I personally thought Bitcoin would actually transfer in real time. I think that was the original use case for it. And, you know, I've actually talked with some of the original people that were named inside of the white paper, blah, blah, blah. I won't be specific. And they're like, it was originally supposed to do that. And we don't know if someone modified it to ruin it, or if it basically just didn't take into consideration scale. But net is, imagine Bitcoin being able to do things around identity and around services that are applied like what we're talking about. So I'm going to go back over to this America, and actually I'll jump from Mexico to America, or this American Republic. Look at these different services here. So you got home, identity, health, voting, finance, business, exchange, currencies, disputes. We won't talk about this other beautiful one that'll be here. But imagine taking the capabilities of what Bitcoin brings to the world around just a financial transaction, but tying it to assets, all assets, a home, a boat, a car, silver, currency, anything that we actually believe is of value. I personally believe the real value in an American dream is not the ability to actually buy a house. It's the ability to actually get the credit to buy the house. That's also why our relationship from day one was so valuable from my perspective. Mm-hmm. It's the trust. And that's what these systems actually give you, is trust, because of what they call cryptography, or crypto, which is two keys, a private key and a public key, that basically just uses math. All of this is just math to roll out these types of systems so that humanity can actually govern itself. Like when I first pulled this up, Greg was like, that's actually really a good, I can get with that. Mm-hmm. What this is saying is important. And ultimately, it's how can we intelligently organize technology so that humanity can actually benefit from it? Instead of being controlled by technology, instead of being profiled by technology, how can humanity actually leapfrog over the existing systems, especially those that have been oppressed? Now, when we talk about the folks that are on this call, there are many that understand oppression. There are many that understand treaties or the lack of treaties. For instance, the Hawaiian Kingdom was stolen. It was stolen by the United States of America without a treaty. I can't make the same statement about New Zealand and Aotearoa, but what I can say is the treaties that were entered into have been violated. So what is the recourse that people have, that is their birthright, their life, By the way, Bruce, we can see you got earphones on now. So how is it that systems can leapfrog over existing systems? For instance, when we talk about what happened in India or in different parts of the world, especially when we see countries coming together like the BRICS countries. So parts of South Africa, Brazil, China, Russia, pieces of Saudi. People won't talk about that, but there's a whole beautiful thing there. When we talk about these countries coming together to create these systems, they're actually using this same type of technology. As a matter of fact, the technology in the digital world grows from the same roots that originated the same technology that BRICS will be using. But what happens when they could actually pair with something that actually has a real world value? And it may be growing like gold and silver on average. For the last couple of years, it's been doubling. But let's take the last 30 years, it's been an average growth rate of about 6% per annum, right?
Mhm.
Now, you could argue that Bitcoin has grown like 6,000%, right? So massive growth within that. But when we really look at what's to stop the digital world from issuing a digital Bitcoin that actually only has 21 million, and people can convert their normal Bitcoin into the digital Bitcoin. This may be a concept, by the way, that the first time I'm ever mentioning it to this body. But think about Dogecoin or Bitcoin or any other digital currency that doesn't transfer at real time. If you didn't notice, there were some things that happened this last week. The Trump organization, this world financial ecosystem, actually announced a Chainlink partnership and integration. And Chainlink does not integrate in with any of these fast technologies that I'm talking about. Cardano, yes. Solana, yes. Both of those are fast, but not Stellar, not Ripple, not the digital world and the native systems. Why? Because they know those systems are going to leapfrog over those other systems. I'll give you an example, and I'll even help you to understand how they all tie together. So here's a perfect example. Now, I don't want to say something negative about Mr. President Trump tied to Ethereum, because I believe that they will literally leverage all of it. And this Chainlink integration is one of the first attempts to do so. But what we're talking about are three different ecosystems, the left and the right, and in between Bitcoin. But what if the digital world enabled Bitcoin to actually be real time? No government, no banks. It still has its anonymous capabilities, so to speak, but it uses, and here's the real value of the digital world. It's those derived keys. When we scanned it, how it created a unique key, machine learning and artificial intelligence can't actually follow that through. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So when you look at Ripple on the left and all the money and the commitments that they're making to the left, and when you look at what Apple are doing and all these other ecosystems, that's why we can sit here and say, hey, there are secret combinations in the world, and even in the technology world, in the big technology world. And when we look at the Clear companies, I'm just going to open up clear.co.com. I'm going to click on competition. And we're just going to scroll down, and we're going to look at the difference between decentralized environments versus centralized environments, and look at Apple versus Clear. So these are all the things that they do, and then the maturity levels. Is Clear mature all the way? No. But with time and money, you know as well as anybody, you can do it. So Google. We also know that, there's been rumors. For those that have been on here long enough, you've already seen us. We haven't touched search, but we did build an alternative to Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, Google Mail, all of the Google suite. And for those that are not aware, I think you were with us. Another board member, Mike Leventhal, introduced me to some of the board members at Google, and we actually went over and helped Google launch Google Suite, which is now Gmail.
Mhm.
Way before, this was 2006, 2007. Anyways, make a long story short, the Clear ecosystems will compete directly with Google, Amazon, that's on the storage side and compute side, Facebook, which I believe that is already going to be done with X. Then we just integrate decentralized systems into X, which is a whole nother conversation. Microsoft, IBM, GoDaddy, and that's on the domain registration side, which really it's a DNS topic. But how all these different companies with all this time, with all of these locations, with all of these employees, with all these revenues and market cap, how we think that this little model that leverages the law of consecration in software development. It's all about open standards and open source. That's why someone just recently said to me, hey, we're going to hold a meeting and let's get an NDA in place. An NDA is a non-disclosure agreement for those that don't know. And it's like, nah, don't worry about it, because everything that we do is all transparent, because the world needs to see what it is so they can understand what the code is doing, what the apps are doing, and then they apply it and use it how they want to, because we're thinking about this not from the historical, like the historical mindset is you actually raise money, get a patent that's a barrier to entry or competitive advantage, then you go public, or you actually get acquired by a public company and the people that raise money get paid back. That's the normal system. But when you really understand the patent system, when the United States of America left Europe and they said, we're going to start up this, we're going to come up with these ideas, and we're going to do this and this and this, then we can go after you. No, all it does is stifle innovation, stifle growth. From a legal standpoint, can you slow people down? Sure. But ultimately, it's not a true and correct principle. Decentralization is a true and correct principle, and living the law of consecration is a true and correct principle. When I say that, I'm talking about nobody owns it, nobody controls it, but everyone can benefit from it. And that's why turning this whole thing on its head is really important. For instance, I'm going to see if I can find a slide that'll turn on some lights. Actually, it's in with the Ethiopian environment. So we're going to scroll down to the bottom of this. This is all about an individual in Ethiopia. We're getting some feedback there.
Michael, can you share your screen?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I think we are. Can I get moderators to validate if we're sharing or not? If not, you're right. You're totally right. I'm so sorry. I've been bouncing through tons of stuff. So what we're seeing here is a chart. Can you see it now, Daniela? Danielle? Can you see it now?
I can see it.
Yes, can see
Okay,
it.
so what this is an individual within this respective country. By the way, Michael, it's wonderful to have you on board. That is something that is materially changed since the last meeting, is we did a formal, massive agreement there. There's some things that need to be executed through, but we would need to welcome the country of Ethiopia in a massive way. But imagine all of us, instead of the old way, we basically go and put our data inside of other people's systems. So when this light goes on for you, it's going to be massive. And maybe it's already on. So instead of us as individuals putting our data inside of that bank system, we go get their bank account and put our assets in their bank. I've had so many bank accounts just shut down. Like, it's like if either they want to lock it up for whatever reason, or they want to just, if you don't pay a fee and you don't pay attention to it, they just shut it down. Like I had a bank that was almost 20 years old, and it had like $40 negative. They don't call, they don't do anything. They just close it. It's like, I need all my records. I need my, so the point that I'm driving at is you can either manage your own data, whether it's social feeds, credit cards, prescriptions, phone records. You think that Google and Facebook have a lot of data on humanity? Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T have a heck of a lot more, because they know where you're actually going and what you're doing. They may not profile you the same way, but these source data providers are massively in the middle of it. So the point is instead of you putting your data into their systems, you basically collect your own data and you allow them access to it. And to be honest with you,
By permission though, right?
oh, yes, by permission, and you can even revoke the permission. So let's say in the health industry, there's a thing called HIPAA in the United States of America. And I don't know if Richard Dick's on. He's actually the one that actually wrote this. Sometimes he joins us, like the last couple of weeks. But what he basically created was Health Information and Portability and Privacy Act, the policy. And then, and this is where it went wrong, and this is why the digital world with councils and voting can actually be the future with the right technology. So literally, they basically said the individual should own their own data. And then when you go to a doctor, and like when you get a referral to another doctor, your data can actually go with it. But they didn't figure out how to transfer it. All they figured out was how to pay it. So HL7 is the protocol to pay a provider from an insurance company and how it actually works. All they figured out was payments. They didn't figure, and by the way, like 42% of the health industry, all the costs, which health industry is the biggest industry in the world. Automotive doesn't compare with it. Space travel doesn't compare with it. Nothing. Why do you think they focused on COVID? right? So, and then tie to the next one with the catastrophes, with storms and other things and controlling the weather. That's going to be the future. But health, like almost over 40% of all the health cost is actually payments. It's the providers getting paid or not. So the point that I'm trying to drive at is Health Information and Portability and Privacy Act is really the individual owning their own data, just like what we showed you within this Ethiopian environment. It's their own data that the individual owns and then says, hey, Mr. Dentist, I'm going to let you're going to take an x-ray of my mouth, but I'm going to own the data. And then if I go to another dentist, I can share them with that data instead of it staying with you and you vendor locking me into you as a dentist. Or maybe it's a prescription for the eyes, which I don't know about you guys. If you want to go get a new pair of glasses, they force you, if it's 12 months, to go get a new prescription. Do you not feel violated with that? I mean, I go up and say, I've already paid for it. It's only been 2 years. It works really well for me. I don't want another one. But they force you. And so think about it. It's all about whether it's these secret combinations using not just fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but they use a form of mystery and margin to force you into it. You've got to get this insurance policy. You've got to be able to do this and this. It's like, no, the individual should be in control of their life. If anything has happened, like look at what Japan just said about the COVID vaccine. It's one of the biggest threats to humanity. Like it's poison. It's like, so think about that. Society, the health organization of the world just said, no, everybody needs to go and do this. How can we trust these things? It should be trust, but verify. So the data should be able to tell us.
And still be your choice.
Yes. And that's the key. That is the key. It's choice. It doesn't matter if people even make the wrong decision compared to someone else, because it might be the right decision for them. But that choice, and it's taking away the ability to choose. And that's an evil plan. And that is what all of us.
COVID really pointed that out probably better than anything right in our face.
You got it. You got it.
The masks, the everything.
Social distancing, 8 feet apart. Okay, so I'm going to stop blabbing. I think I've touched on most of the things. There's just so many things that have happened this last week and it's not even here. It's like even it goes back to other things that are happening. But we're seeing this roll out real time with the different phases with BRICS and what's happening. We're seeing the rewards. We're starting a process with Delta. That's one formal thing that's actually happening. So we're going to go through and actually meet with their leadership. We're going to try and set up a pilot to do 3 things. Payments will actually be last. But when we tie to identity, what else can we tie? It's not just a traveler going from X location to Y location, but also their bags. And why can't we know where their bags are and that traveler is and be able to make sure that they're linked up together and do it in a way that's private, so that identity for them. So imagine tracking bags, imagine using rewards, and then so loyalty, and then imagine using payments. So those are things that we're going to be focusing these pilots on. And this is just the actual crew that we're starting this with. For those that are not aware, we're currently in Utah, and Utah has one of the largest global hubs for Delta in the world. And there's certain teams that we'll be working with around digital transformation. There's other things, and this is actually something that's going to also tie to next month. I won't go through the specifics. You can use your own reality there. Argentina, this is something, Argentina was actually done. Let's see if I can find this for you. This was actually created, I want to say probably 2 months ago. You should be able to see the dates. I thought it showed the dates. These are actually digital assets. So this, I don't know how to say this, but this means something in Argentinian. So both of these different assets are actually the assets there. They don't have activity behind them, but once they start getting active, this system will actually show all transactions worldwide for these different currencies. So imagine, go ahead, somebody's online.
Gaucho.
Go ahead.
Gaucho means cowboy.
Cowboy?
Yeah, gaucho.
Gaucho means cowboy. So this guy right
Pretty
here.
much. Will be like equivalent.
Okay. Thank you. I have no clue. And what about this? Oh, that's probably a simple digital asset. So Let's see if we can wrap this report up. I'd like to introduce a gentleman who is a dear friend, more than a friend, more than a mentor. I would even say, for those of you that are not aware, I had an interesting upbringing. And when I was younger, I don't know, what was it? 17 years ago, maybe 18 years ago, I bumped into this gentleman who has an amazing family. 7 girls?
6 girls and a boy.
6 girls and a boy.
Mhm.
And I won't even go through the details of how we met, but I can tell you that his mentoring and guidance in my life as an individual has changed my trajectory in multiple different ways. And he reached out and said, I not only have, we've kept in touch over the years, so he knows what we're working on, but he also keeps a pulse on what's going on in the market. And he just said, it's time. It's time. Tomorrow we'll figure out what it's time for, but he's re-engaged and he has a deep history of financing some of the craziest stuff and driving awareness of very complicated things that are also very simple, whether it's in the energy world, whether it's in the automotive world. And I believe that, and I know that, like a lot of you say, listen, give me just a quick second here. A lot of you say, why isn't this massively adopted? Why doesn't the world know about this? And you know what I tell you, a lot of it is in the right time when this is supposed to go, it will go. The awareness will go. And there's been a lot of, we need to make sure that the technology and the market is right, and then sprinkle the funding and awareness on it. Sometimes things die if they launch too early. Sometimes things die if they launch too late. We're not necessarily the first into the blockchain ecosystem. Bitcoin is always going to be there, but Bitcoin takes an average of 10 minutes to transact. But what if Bitcoin...
If you're lucky.
Yes. Well, yeah, if you're lucky. With Ethereum, you can actually pay gas and it can speed it up from 2 minutes, but there's a cost component. So if you can actually get rid of the cost component, so could be no cost, but it's real time and no government and no bank. Now we're talking about the elements that future systems can run on, not just identity, not just finance, not just assets, but really systems. That's another thing that I really need. Well, let me wrap up around this gentleman, and I won't be specific on his name, but we look forward to him being involved in this. And, like my father-in-law would always say, time is a great healer and great revealer. And I think that the time has come. So we'll see where things end up there, but we're grateful for him just reaching out this last week. He flew in from a different part of the world. We met down in Florida, and here we are in Utah, actually sitting together. So I look forward to reporting out next week as to some of the results or outcomes within that. Any thoughts, comments, feedback that anyone may have? Questions, interactions?
Just
Probably
one
I've got
comment.
something, Mike. Oh, sorry, you ladies first. Go for it.
I think my gut tells me that the time is right now, because I think so many people are just fed up with what our governments have been doing to us in every aspect of our lives. And I think that people are just hungry. It's not even that they're up anymore. I think they're just starving for something like this. Just a comment.
And
Observation.
She's not in America, she's in Canada. And so they're feeling this pinch from a different environment. We saw and I don't know if you saw this as well, but but any kind of Commonwealth country is really a guinea pig on so many levels. Australia, New Zealand, Canada, they have been tested and poked and prod in so many ways that's different than the rest of the world. Israel's a similar one, but Danielle, totally agree with you. Any other things you want to bring up while we're with you?
No, that's it. Thanks.
I would just add amen to that.
Yeah.
I think the time is right. I think societies are ready for getting back to fundamental individual rights, individuality, instead of government dictating what we're doing and how we're doing it. And the American experiment was and is a great one. It started and it was founded on really, really good principles of individuality and the rights of the individual. And it has slowly eroded to a place where government outgrew the individual and the dominance of different elements of the government have overtaken individuality. And I believe that in a way, the whole COVID situation awakened the world, if you will, and certainly awakened people in the United States and Canada. My wife is from she's a Canadian family, and so we have a lot of roots and tie there and understand a lot of the same anxieties and things that have gone on in Canada this last decade particularly. But it did bring to light a lot of things that people can now see. And people are hungry for that. A lot of people talk about the nostalgia of the 40s and the 50s. Let's go back to the 50s where we really could walk peacefully down the street day or night and enjoy our home and be able to afford our home. And a lot of things have happened between then and now. And I still think that my summary is the world is a great place. I travel a lot, and what I know is the people of the world are all really good. The governments in the world are, some of them are trying to be good, but are stuck in a system that has morphed over a lot of years to a place where even good people get drawn into government positions and can become corrupted by the system itself. So I think there's a lot of decentralizing that needs to take place, and we're in an environment for the first time in my life. I think there's an opening to have it happen and actually have it be supported by some of the larger governments.
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen for that. I hope it happens sooner than later. I just don't feel good anymore. I just feel like the government is just closing in on me, and I'm hearing it all around me also. So
Yeah,
anyway.
I think in Canada particularly, it's very challenging.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you, Danielle. Other thoughts or feedback, Billy?
Yeah, you'll be interested to know that that New Zealand has just been ranked in a global survey as being the second most free jurisdiction in the world, and yet we're not. We are within a head's breadth behind, or just ahead of Canada in terms of loss of personal and national sovereignty. Just double amen to what our friend was just talking about how there are some governments that would like to adapt their behaviour, but the machinery is very, very strong, and unless there's a political impetus and a reason for the governments to change and modify their behaviour, then they never will. Why? Because what happens is the good people, to the point made, good people get, I've seen it in politics, I've seen it in bureaucratical appointments where people go into the system with all the best intentions, but they get absorbed by the environment and they get spat out a different creature than what they were when they first went into their political appointment or the bureaucratic one. Probably the some of the question marks I have, or a couple of statements as well. One is how soon we can get type of system before the BRICS leadership, to see what their opinions and thoughts are around a decentralization approach to what we've been talking about these last many months. I think that would be something to explore. I'd be really interested in being a part of a group to present that to probably President Putin or someone very, very senior in the BRICS leadership, to see how this may be viewed and or adopted by BRICS leadership. I think that's something important to consider. The other thing is examples of living and breathing realities around functional communities that can apply this approach and have it be a proof source to other communities and other nations that this can work. And as you know, Mike, I'm working on an aged care and retirement facility here. We're planning it to be a sovereign 65 plus years aged care facility, as well as a retirement village, and potentially one of a chain. And the whole approach is that the facility itself will be off grid. It'll use up to just state of the art technology to function outside of the system. And I think what we need with this, certainly at the macro level, but I think it wouldn't hurt to have a micro level example of how this can operate. Especially with talking about transactional costs, like using credit cards that cost a lot, and as you say, can take a couple of days either to process something or even for you to get paid. Reverse charge errors on the count of credit cards when they get something wrong. It takes, you're lucky to get it back in a week here in New Zealand anyway, and I'm not too sure what it's like in the US or anywhere else. And so in terms of New Zealand, where we are at, it's very weird. Just to go to the point around COVID, I was probably, well, as you know, Mike, my history here, I was the leading vocal opponent to the loss of civil liberties and human rights in New Zealand because of a 99.97% survivable flu equivalent virus. And
Hold on, let me give some context there. For those that may not have known Billy or just meeting him for the first time, he actually ran for prime minister against Jacinda, the gal that actually took them into this COVID mess. So he was the number one contender. So think about like Trump and Hillary.
Mm-hmm.
He ran for president effect of the country. And they also used the same type of voting counting systems as we use in America, but they use them down there. Just happens to be. So in my opinion, he should have been the prime minister of New Zealand. It was taken from them. Then he stands up for what's true and correct with this COVID thing, and he gets arrested. Now, he comes from a history of working with the military, working with law enforcement, solid record, solid man, and they literally arrest him for standing up for kids that are dying because they're taking their own lives, because social distancing here in Utah was nothing what other people in the world felt.
Yeah.
Especially in New Zealand. We had a team member die from this whole mess. But Billy, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to give good context.
No, thank you. No, I think COVID was the great tester. It was the opening of the portal to digital surveillance, vaccine passports, medical tyranny, but it's also been the portal to be able to ensconce climate change in Agenda 30 Sustainable Development Goals, and to ensconce those two and interconnect them into a the health and medical conversation. So it's going to be interesting to see what Robert Kennedy Jr. does with his appointment as head of health services for the US. But certainly in New Zealand, we are ready for something like this. But I think what we do need is to be able to, in New Zealand, proof source it, and it needs to appear more mainstream than be going down a sort of rabbit hole route to promote this. And I'd be very careful about that. And what I mean by that is New Zealand, even people that are very, very, very pedestrian and very within the box in middle New Zealand society. Even the ones that were on the fence or maybe on the other side of the fence during the COVID pandemic era, you know, they're now more on our side than what they were when they started this journey. They know that something's wrong. We're seeing banks. We've had a couple of major outages in our banking systems here in New Zealand, and we now have banks that are no longer dispensing cash at tills at the counter, and other things connected with that. They want to know where your money's going when you want to withdraw it, and if you get your money, it feels like it's a privilege rather than you getting custody of what's yours to begin with. So I'm really, again, we're keen, Mike, to do what we can down here to promote this. My connections are all through the Pacific, as you know, and but I think the next thing would be something worth considering, how we get that in front of the BRICS leadership, and then the other thing is, just to finish off, is just how we can deliver a proof source of applicability, especially from New Zealand side, because I think New Zealand would be up for it.
Absolutely agree. One of the things that we did do long ago was we actually went to, even before any of the BRICS countries really came about, so to speak, we went physically. This is actually physically in Russia, and they took very serious what we were doing way back in 2015, 16, 17, even to the point to embrace it. Now, this was before, I know, some of the wars had already started between Ukraine and Russia. People think they just recently started, but they've been going on for a very long time. But when we dig into it, Russia had already gathered all of these different countries together. Now, this is taken in 2017 or 2018 with me physically in Russia. And when we dig into the details, these documents, I wonder if there's a slide here. They actually talk, it's all about decentralization. This is all about decentralization. This was before the sanctions were hit on them. So that's one of the reasons they're thriving, is because they can transact. Now, they don't have the same level of backing. And moving on from Russia, this is South Korea. This is around identity, which, by the way, the barcodes and the QR codes, the association behind the standards behind them, have all adopted this same technology. This technology actually was originally created here out of Utah. Remember Phil Wimley?
Yeah.
So this is actually Phil Wimley. There's another gentleman named Sam Smith who actually helped create what's called CARI, and that's the basis of the technology behind it. This is in Saudi Arabia, which is a bigger conversation than we can even have. But and in India and China were also countries that we touched base with. We didn't get anywhere with China, but as far as touching these different parts of the world, we've done a lot. This was before COVID. So now after COVID, there's a whole nother level of touch. But to be honest with you, what I believe needs to happen is actually the United States of America. And what's just happened within the last 2 weeks has opened up the door for transactions around the House, the Senate, and new leadership to actually step up and, I believe, implement this type of capability for America. And if this happens in America, which we're already rolling out in multiple other parts of the world, when we look at the digital world, we look at all these different parts. So the light gray is phase 1, the dark gray is phase 2, and then the third phase is really the BRICS ecosystem and linking them all together. Now, what's important is the technology absolutely will work together. It really will link up and play together. So same wallets, they can integrate. Like, for instance, even with the systems that we currently have, ClearPay will actually link to Bitcoins today, to any of the Ethereum assets today, and any of the Ripple or Stellar assets in addition to the digital world. Those are assets, and then also ties into, the off-ramp rails. So the Visas, the credit cards that are already there. So it's not like it technically can't work, but politically, it's been very eye-opening to see what happened just last month in October 2024, where BRICS came together in Russia, and all they really announced was their BRICS Clear system. That's what it's actually called, is BRICS Clear. And what it is a really a standard that they're trying to gain adoption on, and a currency, a new type of dollar that combines all of it together. There's no real meat to it. So what you're asking for, Billy, is absolutely the right timing, the right direction, and the right energy that should be focused there. So what I would say is, I know that there's a couple meetings down there. By the way, Bruce and Billy, it's imperative that both of you connect. There's another gentleman from America that's down there in Aotearoa/New Zealand, and you need to meet with him as well, because he ties to some of these conversations around BRICS. Because what's the backing? What's the history? All of it has to come together, and it can, but there's a lot that has to snap into place. And one of the things, because I'm very not patient, if that's a correct English, I've learned that we have to be patient. And in the right time is when this is supposed to happen. And it may not even be in our lives, some of it, but I believe if we work hard every day and we try to be in the right spirit, and Billy, you will know when to reach out. You'll know who to reach out to. You'll know when it's time to start pushing. You'll know what your role is. You'll know it spiritually. And all I would say is, if all of us can just take the time to make the right decisions, and it may be just a simple change in life, or it may be asking a question a different way, but you're all here for a purpose. Like literally, each one of you are here for a reason. Maybe it's, what did you just send there, Mike? Yeah, BRICS Pay. So I don't know how to answer that, other than I would welcome the opportunity to work with you in any form. Michael Domina, is there something you wanna bring up, bud? Looks like you're going through it.
Yeah, maybe nothing specific, Michael. We'll update each other tomorrow, and then based on update, you and I would form a message for next week's call.
Okay.
But overall, it looks positive. There's a lot of awareness of the value the decentralization is bringing in, the technology capabilities. But at the end of the day, there's always the people in process challenges of the current system. And how do you, enable decentralization without literally taking an arm and fight the existing system? And that's really where we're struggling, and we're trying to formulate through that advisors and stakeholders to come up with a transformation plan of centralization, hybrid, and decentralization through that continuum. And that's where we're heading now. But I'll update you tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have a message next week for the extended team.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you.
And I would just close with seconding what Billy said and talking about the reality of I'm gonna debate Mike on this idea that, hey, this could take a real long time. Well, it may take a real long time to get global, but I do believe that we have a window of opportunity right now in a very short time. I almost feel like a little bit like I felt when I was in a position where I was hiding under a desk and thinking the Russians were going to blow us up with nuclear bombs, and that was my youth. And the Iron Curtain was standing, and I got to a point in my life where they were talking about how the Eastern Europeans were pushing back a little bit. And my mind was saying, you know what, I don't know that I'll ever live to see the Iron Curtain come down, the wall come down. I said that, and I heard that it might be coming down, and I watched what Reagan said. And from the time that started happening and to the time it went down was so fast that I feel like we're in one of those places again. I think the monetary systems of the world, I think the individuality of the world and the people in the world are all ready for that to happen. I think the wall's going to come down. I think it might happen way faster than we all think. And if we're positioned right, as Billy talked about, introducing all of this to the BRICS people right now and showing them that there's a system in place that can take them to that place quickly, it may happen real fast.
Yeah, I completely concur with that. I really do. I think that's the way. I've been watching BRICS very, very closely. Narendra Modi from India, his response to it's been intriguing. Xi Jinping and Kazan, with them going through all this, and I think that window you're talking about, I think it's a real window, because I think it's going to take Trump some time to be able to tactically position his pawns within his administration, within the government, to be able to fight back the sabotage, internal sabotage of the US dollar from people within the US system. I mean, we had the Federal Reserve Chairman last week, get asked if President Trump asked him to resign, would he? And he point blank said, "No, I'm not going to do that at all. I'm not going to do anything that Trump tells me to do." And so it's the tail wagging the dog. And I think you're right. I really do completely concur with that. I really think there's a gap. It's not just a little ajar. I think it's quite open to get in there and do that. I've got some good contacts up that way as well, and I think it's all open, Mike. I do, and I'm like you. I'm impatient about many things, but I also believe, timing is everything. But you've got to make your own luck, and you've got to create it and build it. And sometimes it requires a bit of pushing to get it through, because not everything is just a case of, well, the timing's right, the door's open, and you slide through like you're in a mudslide. Sometimes you actually have to push through the resistance to get the result that you want. And I think we could be at that position now.
Yeah.
That's just my thoughts anyway, Mike.
Think about what would happen if, by a stroke of a pen, different organizations were just gone. Let's say the TSA just disappeared. The FDA just disappeared. The IRS just disappeared. A lot of these roles that these people are talking about, they're just gone.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be that type of massive shift that's going to start happening. And then it's going to be, oh, well, we just got rid of TSA. How do we keep people secure? How do we know how to trust these people? How do we know how to do things? Because the technology's there. Look at what FedEx can do with packages.
Yeah.
We know how to track things.
Yeah, billion packages.
Yeah, I mean, every
A day.
single day on the same planes that they can't even track the individuals, let alone their luggage. So all I would say is, Billy, please go, please engage. And you know that everything in the digital world and everything that Clear, it's everyone's. Use it. It's yours. Talk about it. Embrace it. Create the opportunity. And I love what you're doing with the projects that you're doing around sustainability and building these communities where people can live for the future, and even use payment systems and asset management systems that are decentralized, reputation systems. Because you think about it, there's a different credit system in New Zealand than there is in America, and in Canada, and et cetera. So why can't there be a global one? This was one of the things that Delta just loved. They were like, you're telling us there can be a jurisdiction that's the whole world, and all we have to do is figure out how to adapt to that, and then we can resolve disputes, and we can get payments, and we can do rewards. And it's like they want this stuff, but it's these agencies. For instance, the rewards conversation for Marriott and for Delta and for lots of others is all come down to, does the IRS recognize that as income? And there's answers for it. But ultimately, if you just get rid of these things, like, I don't know, one of the other big things, can anybody on this call validate that Gary Gensler has resigned from the Security and Exchange Commission this last week? Did that really happen? We'll go back to that. Maybe someone can answer that sooner or later. So by the way, Billy, thank you. And Michael, thank you. Any other thoughts or conversations before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'd just like to express my gratitude to everybody this afternoon, especially Michael, because we only touched base, I think it was last night. also ka nui te mihi me kōrero Billy. But it's been really interesting. I suppose if there's anything that's kind of excited me over the past few months is the talk about the QFS, the quantum financial system, which is supposed to have kicked in already, and which is supposedly to bring relief for everybody worldwide. Whether that happens and whether it becomes a reality remains to be seen, but I understand it's already been launched. The other thing that has me, I wouldn't say excited, but a deal of anticipation, and that is the activation of NESARA and GESARA, the National Economic Security and Reformation Act. The reason being is because of what the so-called elite did with regards to claiming our birthrights and using our birth certificates to generate funding for them. In fact, any certificate that we had, they used to generate money for their own well-being. And as I understand that through NESARA being national, whereas GESARA is global. And so I understand that NESARA is more applicable to the US, whereas GESARA is applicable worldwide. But has the same ramifications and benefits to the people of the world. And that kind of excites me because I went through the process of reclaiming my birthright through the ZKV 1666. When I did all of that and I got a certificate back from Her Majesty's High Court of Justice in London, confirming that I was the executor of my living estate. I was advised by London to notify the Prime Minister, who at that time was John Key. So I sent my documents off to him, and it took 3 notices. And if you understand the importance of 3 notices, after the 3rd notice that I sent to him, he then responded. 2.5 weeks later, he resigned as Prime Minister and resigned from Parliament. Then Jacinda Ardern kicked in, and I did the same thing to Jacinda Ardern, and eventually she resigned as well. And plus I served documents on her, as well as all of the members of Parliament with regard to COVID. I went a different route to what the way Billy went. And I've continued to draft documents and serve on them, and now we've got them across the barrel. And so it's really interesting in that I've filed for a summary judgment. And so far, everything is looking positive. And with that summary judgment, we then get to take back our lands, the lands of our inheritance. And I think, and Billy might be able to verify or amend my statement here, I think the population of the Māori race here in Aotearoa is something like about between 8 and 12%. And so the governments continually let all of these foreigners come into our land and suppress us almost on a daily basis. And so, I'm forever getting calls from different people, when are you gonna act? And my answer has always been, when the Lord prompts me to act, I will act. And so the Lord was the one that brought me back to New Zealand to do what I've been doing. And so that's where I take my guidance and direction from, is always through prayer, fasting, and waiting for those promptings to come through. And when it does, I will act. But everything's been served. I'm grateful because it's what happened in 2015, I think it was, when Hillary Clinton and Obama came to New Zealand, met with John Key, and he gave all of these millions and millions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, to those 2 individuals. And, and the people of New Zealand suffered. So I then sent the intelligence report through to President Trump and advised him of what's happened. And as a result of that, it opened up communication channels between the both of us. I continued to communicate with him. And, so it's been a blessing in that sense. And then when he happened to mention the QFS a week, 10 days ago, and I thought, maybe this is it. So there's all of those kinds of things. And the other thing that has excited me over recent times, I understand the Brunson case at the Supreme Court of the US has been adjudicated over. And from what I'm hearing is that they've won the case. And that being true means that Biden has been sitting in there as an illegal, unelected president of the United States, and that Trump actually won the election back in 2020. So that being the case, there's going to be a few arrests, I would suggest, happen over coming weeks, and then that'll bring another positive chain across the world. And I know that just from my own research, I know that President Trump is pretty close and closely tied to the leaders of the BRICS nations. And it's not only the 5 of them anymore. There's quite a number of countries that have now joined BRICS purely from a currency point of view, and likewise the value. But I know all of that's going to change soon too, where all of us will then be on equal parity with regards to currency values and so on. I mean, you guys in the States, if we purchase anything that comes from the States, we pay double. I mean, it's ludicrous in terms of the exchange rates that apply across the world. And I think our money is basically worthless. So I'm looking forward to the implementation of the QFS, NESARA, JASARA, and more so the activation and the release of judgment order from the Supreme Court. So I'm excited about the days ahead. And then on top of all of that, fulfill what the Lord gave me to do, and that is to restore our people to the lands of our inheritance here in Aotearoa. And so on that note, I express my aroha, which is love to all of you here on this call. It's been wonderful to be part of it. I also look forward to the opportunity to meet with the person that's in Auckland. I think that's where he is, isn't he, Michael? He's in Auckland.
Yeah, and he'll directly.
And look forward.
It'll be up to you to use your eyes and spirit of discernment, but you know, he's there and ready to meet with you, but he's directly tied into elements of the things that you're talking about and the timing behind it and the birthrights and the history behind it. And it's fortuitous and I believe serendipitous for him to be there right next to you along with Billy. And I think the timing for all of you to come together and see how things can complement and from the strengths, which has been really interesting for me to watch what Trump's done. He's grabbing all of these leaders that all have their own sphere of influence and bringing them together and letting their strengths shine. That is true leadership. And it's really like I was told earlier today, Oz, Dr. Oz, he selected him to do something. I don't even know the details, but it's like, wow. So I would just, please, I know that it's been years that we've been trying to connect these different things up. I know that you'll know in the right time for Aotearoa. And just know these systems have been built for you. They're ready for you. And we would welcome the opportunity in whatever capacity. I think you'll know after you meet with these couple different individuals, and they may open the doors to others as well. And there's also some other things that are kind of floating around down there in New Zealand around Cryptopia. You know, I don't know if the exchange there, the country of New Zealand with Grant Thornton and some of the things going on there, there's going to be some interesting things that may be not on your radar, but relevant. So, but it's wonderful to have you here. I think you should play a role in the digital world ecosystem and running a council and being a voice as you're in parallel standing up Aotearoa in whatever capacity or form you'd like. So, and just know that you're always welcome. You don't need to do anything, but you're always welcome, and your voice is really important. So
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that.
maybe we could ask others if they have any feedback and then come back to you for you to close us up. Would that be appropriate?
You me?
Yeah, wrap us up with
You want me to
prayer when the right time. Let me just ask everyone else if
Sure.
there's anybody else that wants to say a word before we wrap up. Any other thoughts or feedback? Susan?
Well, I just sent some links, the last one about Dr. Oz leading the Medicare Medicaid agency. And then I sent a link about Gensler possibly stepping down after Thanksgiving.
That's awesome. I think that's all been by design with what he's been doing, to be honest with you. And I think that ties into some other folks, which I won't name names today, but yeah. So hopefully these are not just rumors, but I mean, he's going to get whacked even if he doesn't. So it's only a matter of time. But other thoughts or comments from anyone? Okay. Bruce, do you want to close us with a word of prayer?
Sure, thank you. Our Father who art in heaven, as we, a few of thy children, come before thee at the conclusion of some meeting this afternoon in New Zealand, and especially to listen to everything that has been presented this day. We pray for thy Spirit to guide and direct each of us in our various capacities, and to be able to impart knowledge one with another, and especially those about us, that they may come to learn of the importance of communication, and more so the decentralization of not only funding, but also in terms of the way that certifications are produced, and also be able to benefit from that decentralization process that Michael has shared with us this day. We give thanks unto thee for all that thou hast blessed us with, for the health and strength, and for the intelligence that thou hast blessed each of us with, for thy purposes, and more importantly, for the children of the world, no matter where they may be, and moreover, whatever circumstances that they may face. We pray for a blessing of comfort upon all humanity, wherever they may be. That relief for this depression and trauma may be able to be expedited, in order that all of thy children may benefit from that which is being prepared and about to be facilitated across the earth. And to this end, we give thanks unto thee for the opportunity to participate in this meeting. And we ask thee now to close this meeting of ours with thy blessings. In the name of our Lord, our Savior and Redeemer, even Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Kia ora.
Amen.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Michael.
Love everyone. We will see
Thank you, everyone.
next week at the same time. And Susan, your voice is to be heard and understood more than it is. Much love, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Have a good week, everyone.